put ourselves out there to be sincerely, with a pure heart and without fear or prejudice, ambassadors to these civilizations, because they are out there. And you know what? They're waiting. And I think they've been less than pleased with, so far, the response on balance that humans have had towards them. Because it's either been denial or fear or xenophobia or frank hostility. I mean, the Roswell event was actually an electromagnetic system going off that caused these two craft to hit each other and collide and crash. But a lot of people don't know that. It was an FBI document that pretty much states that it was a new radar dome. Well, the radar dome had some sort of Tesla coil type electromagnetic, circa 1947 electromagnetic pulse. And these two craft that were seeing what we were doing at the 509th Bomb Squadron, which was the only nuclear bomb squadron, atomic bomb squadron in the world at the time, they weren't nuclear bombs and they were atomic. You know the difference, atomic, nuclear? Atomic is fission, nuclear is fusion. Anyway, but it was an atomic bomb squadron, the only one, and they turned this thing on, boom, and these two craft that were going along, one sort of exploded right there northwest of Roswell. The other one descended and kind of cracked in half or broke up near Socorro, and that's where they got the ET that was alive out of it, what they called the EB. So there are two ships. But unfortunately, that was a terrible event. It was a violent event. So a lot of people have said, well, can't the ETs avoid that if they have all these abilities? I said, no, not just because they have advanced technologies does not make them omniscient. So here's another mistake everyone makes. They conflate advanced civilization or more advanced civilization with being godlike. Don't make that mistake. They're just people like us, but very, very advanced. Now, they may have IQs of 450, so I'm a moron by comparison. But, which I will admit, I am a moron by comparison with some of these civilizations, but, or an imbecile. A primate. But, nevertheless, it doesn't mean that they become infallible. You know, I think infallibility rests with divinity and the unbounded being, and that's it. Anything this side of it is subject to failure and error, even the archangels. So you just keep that in mind as you look at this. There's not infallibility assigned just because it's very, very advanced. It kind of reminds me of, everyone know what the cargo cults were, World War II? Great story, because this is a great example of the mistake humans make. So in World War II, we were flying, these propeller planes and landing them on islands in the Pacific. And we landed on some islands where there were native peoples who had never seen Western civilization or an airplane. And when we left and then came back and we found that the native peoples had made altars and made things that looked like a biplane with a propeller, and they were worshiping because it was gods that had come from the sky. And it had become, it's like the movie The Gods Must Be Crazy. The guy throws a Coke bottle out the window and the people start fighting over this. So we need to take a step back and say, okay, these are a very advanced civilization. Some of them may be, I think are, 10 to the 7th years, millions of years more developed than we are. And all of them are thousands of years. But many of them are hundreds of thousands to millions of years more developed, socially, spiritually, technologically, than Homo sapiens are. But nevertheless, they're still people. Now, there are people that are very, very advanced. And there are people, some of them are so advanced that they could be mistaken as gods in sort of ancient archaeology and the ancient astronaut sort of concepts. And of course, this makes total sense. I mean, if you have something that appears like that can appear, dematerialize, rematerialize, go straight through objects, it would look like something metaphysical and spiritual. And so there is the beginning of the conflation of very advanced civilizations and technologies with the mythology that becomes sort of a catechism and misunderstanding. So we need to be careful not to make that mistake. We need to say, oh, okay, childhood's end, let's understand this, and approach these civilizations as really advanced civilizations, but because we are conscious and can become in this state of universal consciousness, in that sense, equal. Totally 100% equal, even though we haven't developed all the fine points of functioning yet. I mean, we're more dysfunctional than functional, I think you all agree, as a species. But, you know, we can evolve to a higher level of function through conscious development and evolution. And these civilizations understand that. I think, of course, the big concern of the last 75 years has been we start detonating nuclear bombs and hydrogen bombs in the atmosphere and doing things to destroy the biosphere and the oceans. You begin to see, as one British intelligence guy told me, it's like we kicked a hornet's nest because a red flag went up over the planet after we started detonating atomic weapons that, wow, these people have kind of gotten off the reservation are an existential threat to themselves and potentially others. So that's a perspective I want to bring for just a minute. In the heart of compassion of the Buddha, as it were, is how might humans be viewed? Okay, in the last 100 years, we've killed around 200 million people in warfare and continue to do so. I lived in the Middle East for 3 years, saw plenty of stuff. And that doesn't count just murders, good old-fashioned homicides. I mean, organized murder, which is warfare. 200 million, well, that's the population of many of these planets that we've just wiped out in a couple generations through fighting over what? An economic system, a religious system, this system, that system. So, but then you combine that, so it's no longer with swords and maces and even muskets, it's with thermonuclear weapons. And in covert programs, these rather fearsome scalar electromagnetic weapons based on these very advanced trans-dimensional sciences. So I think that the civilizations are correct to have some deep concern, and I think they need also to have people scattered around the world, everywhere, who understand these issues and will go out calmly, but with a depth of understanding and a depth of experience, and attempt to make contact that's peaceful and mutually beneficial, which is the whole gist of the CE5 initiative, the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind initiative. And a close encounter of the fifth kind is simply when humans say, I'm going to make contact as a diplomat and initiate it and allow it to continue, however way it flows. And it may be in this dimension, or it may be trans-dimensional, it may be in thought, it may be in part in this dimension and part in another. And sometimes it all comes together in one night and all those phenomena happen at once. We've been out under the stars where we've had objects that have done electronics, people who've had remote views in their mind where there are 5, 10 people see or hear the same thing. A craft then appears that everyone sees, et cetera, and so on and so forth. Now, because the whole gamish of sort of phenomenon. And then there'll be these beings that are moving around us that aren't physical, but that are shimmering, almost like a subtle hologram moving around the desert or moving around on the beach or wherever we are. Really amazing stuff. And what I've found is that people have expectations that are based on, let's go to Starbucks and have, a croissant and a latte. No, there's other ways that they communicate. And a lot of it is because that's edifying, that's instructive. It opens up another dimension and aspect. And part of it is just practicality. If you're in what's called a hostile theater of operations, using military speak, which would be called Earth, that has space-based weapon systems that are all out there already deployed since 1965. I know guys who designed them. That when these objects fully materialize, will target them with an electromagnetic scalar weapon that goes faster than the speed of light. Believe me, it's not the 50s and 60s anymore where they just would materialize and land everywhere. Now, they do sometimes, but it's risky. So we have to operate with that understanding also. So there's another understanding I want to bring to this that people do not like hearing, but I'm an emergency doctor. You come into my ER with a headache and I find a brain tumor, I'm not going to tell you got a migraine. I'm going to say you got a brain tumor. So here's the deal. We've developed systems that, unfortunately, are approaching parity transdimensionally with what some of these civilizations have in terms of technology, which means that we are a threat. And also means that, now, not that the intelligence community can't be everywhere at all places at all times, believe me. Unfortunately, when I'm around doing something like this, in all likelihood, it is monitored. But you guys, this is why my whole idea is to squeeze the tube of toothpaste and get it out. And then I become redundant and unnecessary. If I drop dead, doesn't matter. Because you guys can do it, and they cannot keep track of thousands, tens of thousands of people now who understand or attempting to do this. So I think that's the power of the people coming together and decentralizing this operation. And by decentralizing it, it's like decentralizing it away from me and the center of my operation. Because they cannot keep track of all that. So don't make the boogeyman in the intelligence community more powerful than they are. It's a little bit like the Wizard of Oz. The man behind, who's the man behind the curtain, pulling all the levers, scaring the bejeebies out of everyone. Now, I'm not saying they're a total paper tiger, but at the same time, they're not omniscient or omnipresent, which means that you guys can do this and have some amazing success with contact separate from me being around. My purpose is just to teach and to let people understand how this happens and then go do it yourself. The medical model is see one, do one, teach one. You see it done once, if you're in med school, you see it done once, and then you do it. And the next time you're teaching someone to do it. Boom, boom, boom. So that's the model. And it works, because that's how it propagates. Knowledge propagates very quickly that way.